glad we can have you back on the show, man.
It's good to be back here. It's been a while.
Too long. Evening, and welcome to the Cognitive Rampage. I'm your host, Adam Lowery, as usual. You know my old friend, my old guest Leo, my buddy, my mentor. Been a while since we had him on the show, so for those of you that were waiting on Albert Ortiz, who you saw on the roster, going to be here, an old friend of mine. Ski couldn't make it down, but we'll be rescheduling him. We'll have him on the show eventually again soon, so he couldn't come down. But you know, I always love catching up with Leo and having him on the show. Who knows where we'll go after that, but just wanted to say that to you guys. As far as Ski's not on the show, but next week I'll be broadcasting live from Boca Raton. I'm going over there. I'll be seeing, you know, Jan. I'm going to talk to Jan over there.
Cool.
And then the following weekend, I'm going to stay and go back to Boca. I'm going to talk to Michael Siebel, the CEO we brought on with My Window Out.
Yeah. Cool.
We'll be bringing him over too.
Nice.
So how you been, man?
Just staying out of trouble.
Yeah, right.
More or less.
Yeah, right. Staying out of trouble.
So, yeah, no, things are going pretty good. I understand you're doing something tomorrow night, too, you were saying.
Tomorrow night?
Yeah, Brio or something like that.
Oh, yeah, I'm talking tomorrow. I'm giving a lecture at Brio's at Waterside.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Waterside, right?
Right.
The shops of Waterside?
Or Waterside shops, yeah.
Something. Up in Naples there, but I'll be talking at Brio's for about an hour. I'm talking to Southwest Florida Board of Nutrition.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, about 15 or so ladies, I believe, maybe a few others. But I'm talking to them about a few things, about how to talk to, how to address their clients differently. You know, some people are finding it difficult to correlate how to connect with their client, how to find the empathy. You know, when you're a nutritionist, you're trained in, you know, dietitian, food, you know, they don't necessarily teach you how to talk to people, you know, how to understand your client and things like that.
It can be a difficult population in the sense that they tend to be somewhat defensive, you know, and you know, yeah, they're into nutrition, but sometimes not always, you know, voluntarily, and or they know they need to be, but it doesn't mean that to really have that motivation yet. So that's where your motivation stuff can really kick in.
Yeah, we'll see, man. I'm excited for it. I put together a pretty good talk. We'll cover some cool things. You know, I went. I don't know if you saw. I went pretty nuts on my Facebook today. And Twitter.
I haven't been on today.
No, you haven't seen it today?
No.
I was reading a lot between last night and this morning, kind of on a read binge, and just small excerpts from all kinds of books, you know, from Wake Up by Sam Harris to Obstacle is the Way, Ryan Holiday, a couple other books, man. I'm trying to remember. I made a whole list, but anyway, I was pulling from those, and I had all these quotes going up, you know, just monologues, really. You know, about the wholeness perspective, you know, some talking about finding that vocation, but it was just too lot to really sum up, man. But my daughter asked me this evening when we were grabbing dinner, she said, you know, I wonder if or why I'm not, or if I'll be that kid, you know, that just knows what their passion is from the beginning, right? You know, you've met those people that, you know, since 10 years old, they knew they wanted to be a writer, lawyer, whatever, and she wondered about that, you know. And some of my posts today had to do with finding that vocation or what that may be, you know. And I was trying to explain to her how that happens. How does one find that passion, that vocation, or what that is?
I think the average now is like people in college change their major about 5 times before they settle into one.
Yeah.
And so it's, you know, it's all part of that process. When you're thinking of, you know, define what you want to do, that's usually the outcome. But I mean, it's the process of, you know, the growth that takes place and the different things you're encountering, learning, classes you're taking, whatever. You know, it sort of funnels you in a direction that makes sense.
Yeah.
But some people, you know, right off the bat have that affinity to a certain topic, and it grows with them. But, you know, if you tend to be somewhat eclectic and have a lot of interest, which isn't a bad thing, but sometimes it's hard to narrow it down to a path that really leads you into something lifelong that you want to do. Then you have people that find that interest and branch out from it, you know. And I knew a person who was director of a microbiology lab, and she was 39, 40, pretty well set. You know, I had a great position at Indiana University, and she decided she wanted to be a gynecologist. And
Just like that.
That would mean going back and going to medical school,
Sure.
residency, everything. But hey, she figures time's going to go by either way. But he's doing something that's you know, that purpose, that purposefulness.
Yeah, that's where a lot of that talks about. You know,
Yeah.
it's, I told my daughter, when people even ask me, you know, about doing what you love for a living, all this kind of stuff, you know, I argue back. I say, look, don't do what you love for a living. Don't do that. People make that mistake, and I made that mistake. Because everything turns to a job. And so if you take all of your hobbies, everything that's fun for you, that you love,
Right.
and you turn it to a job,
Right.
well, you run out of shit that you like to do. You don't have any more fucking hobbies. And
Yeah.
for me, I mean, look, when I realized I'm a music lover fan like you, all sides, you know, all kinds, all sides, all faucets. But, you know, and I was a DJ for a while. When DJing became a job, I realized anything becomes a job. So for me, it wasn't about doing what you love. Keep those because those are hobbies. They make you fucking interesting, and
Right.
they keep your life purposeful.
Right.
But it's about doing something you have a passion for. So when that becomes a job, you have the passion to push you through it. Does that make sense?
Well, but isn't that sort of based on your perception? I mean, if you think it's a job, it's a job.
Right, right.
If you think it's something I enjoy doing, it stays something you enjoy doing.
Yeah, sure.
So, I mean, I know a guy that,
But how much of it, that's a good question, because I've been talking to a friend of mine, you know, we've been talking about some things in life. And how far is it? See, I love our fucking talks, bro. When we get off, I love it. So, how far is it where it's the perception, right? Like you said, right?
Right.
It's not what we love to do because of our perception. How much do we force the perception or control it, create it, build it, whatever word, to make that perception, even though we're not feeling that fulfilled ideal or whatever it is
Right.
that, you know, where is the line between us going, I'm not fulfilled in what I'm doing, and I'll just keep changing my perception so I can maintain this environment?
well, I think, I mean, there again, that you've changed the perception. I'm maintaining my focus to change the environment. I mean, that's a different perception.
Touché.
So, I mean, what happens though is, I think where people get in trouble is if they're doing something they love, but they don't have control over what it is they're doing.
Oh, elaborate on this.
Like if you're doing something you love, like let's say, I don't know, you're a house painter. You know, you just love painting houses. But if I'm doing that and I set my own time schedule, my own pace and everything, all of a sudden I'm working for a contractor telling me when that house has got to get painted. Now all of a sudden I've lost control of that passion, and that becomes a resentment, and now it becomes work. So how free are you in what you're trying to do to live it the way you want to live it?
And how much of it, if it's not subcontractors or contractors you're answering to, is it the money? That eventually you go, well, I got to do it tonight. I got to keep working tomorrow. You know, I got to push through it to get the money. The money becomes the purpose.
Right, and I mean, that's the same deal. So it's, if I put myself in a situation where I start expanding my wants, and now I have to work to maintain those wants, now the wants have changed my perception. Where once something I enjoy, now I'm compelled to do it, or else I feel there's consequences. So there again, I've lost control of something I enjoy. You're right; it doesn't happen often. Although this one guy I know that he was that guy in high school. If he didn't know where he was probably fishing. And I mean, every moment he had free, he was out there somewhere fishing.
Yeah.
So he goes to school and he gets a degree in fish science. And now he's working, I think, out in Idaho for the national parks. And his job is to go around the state of Idaho, check out all the lakes in the state parks and monitor the fish population.
Perfect.
And they gave him a boat. They gave him, an RV, a four-wheel drive to tool around, and that's what he does every day. There's no one telling him what lake he's got to do when or whatever.
And where was the teacher or the guidance counselor that called him in high school and said, what do you like to do, son? Fish?
Yeah.
That's what you like to do. Okay. And instead of trying to reroute the child
Right.
to shape the child for an environment,
Right.
allow the child's environment to shape their own environment.
Exactly.
So so where was the teacher going, so fishing's what you like to do? Let me look up a job for you called fish population maintenance for the fish and wildlife or for the national parks.
Yeah.
And let me show you how you can still get a degree and do what you love to do. I mean, where is that? I mean, hell, I listened again to that. Sorry to go off, man, but I listened to the Peter Thiel, Tim Ferriss show again today, You know, and he talks about that notion of what part of it becomes you're doing it because the crowd is telling you to do it. You know, when it's a full-on group think. I have to take this because of the joke I played on my wife.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Do you want to explain the joke that I played on my wife?
Go ahead. I don't want
Hello, honey.
to ruin it for you.
Yeah, you guys home? Okay. No. I didn't take the computer, honey. Are all my watches and firearms still there?
That's cruel.
What about my watches and firearm? I'm just kidding with you, honey. I came home to get some of the equipment I left, and I noticed the house was open, so I hid the laptop under the pillow in our room. And you're live on air right now, so. And you're live on the air right now too, so.
It's probably good audio.
You're live on the air.
But the audio isn't. You're not able to hear that.
That's
Okay.
funny. Oh, it's hard to hear because of the
Yeah.
thing. Sorry for the left field, but you know that where's that notion of where it becomes groupthink insanity when you really think about it. That we all. I'll ask you this. Tell me something that you know for a fact that not many people agree with you on, or no one agrees with you on.
Well, I mean, there's always people that are crazy enough to agree with me.
But you see what I mean?
But the idea is,
it's a groupthink insanity, is that we do things like shovel kids off to school. All the greatest minds tend to go to all the same schools for all the same degrees. They tend to all be lawyers, all be doctors at Harvard, Yale. What if those great minds that weren't told that that's where great minds go and do, went into engineering, went into science, went into teaching?
well, unfortunately, a lot of it's money driven.
That's
Okay. So if you're going to spend $100,000 or whatever it is to go to college and have to pay back those debts, then you better have a job that can pay them back. If you want to major in archaeology, then that's great, but it's just not practical, or dance, or music. And that's where I think a lot of the people that influence lives, they're thinking about what's in their best interest from a practical standpoint, but they're also not really hearing what it is that they have that passion for. So, and oftentimes people will take the advice and get to a certain point and say, whoa, I don't want to do this, and then they shift gears.
That's funny. Thiel, the billionaire inventor of PayPal, was in law school and then just went, no, fuck this, and walked.
Right.
And now he's a multi-billionaire.
Mm-hmm. But in a way, is that bad? In a sense, it gives you perspective.
But see, he argues, I'm going to throw some left field. This is where he gets you in that same talk. He says, where he gets me too. He says, look, failure has been romanticized. Failure is nothing but tragedy, and only tragedy. And he goes, I think an issue is that too many people have romanticized failure that almost allows us to accept failure, when any failure is a tragedy. And he goes to explain it from a business idea like this, all right? You start a business, and the business fails. Well, you think the business failed for reason 1, when the business really failed for reason 1, 2, 3, and 4. Well, you accept the failure as going as a learning stage. I know why it failed. Now we open up a second business, and it fails for reasons 2, 3, and 4, not 1. So the notion that each business that fails is a tragedy, every idea that fails is a tragedy, that we shouldn't romance the idea of failure, that almost it opens the door to allow failure.
How about you figure 1, 2, 3, and 4? Maybe the failure is a lack of insight into why it failed. If you have the insight and fully understand, and maybe even get people that know more than you about the situation to point out why, then it becomes a growth experience. So to say that failure is a tragedy is his perception.
Sure.
Okay, sure. And he likes to believe it that way because he's burning his bridges. In other words, when I failed, I don't want to look back. I just want to keep moving forward, which is, his style, his strategy to find success. But I don't necessarily agree with him in the sense that, life is about ups and downs, failures. And to say that my life is filled with tragedy because I fail is to say then when I'm enjoying life, the perception that I have, or the appreciation for when it's working, where I don't take it for granted, where it's more meaningful to me. It's I've had to work for this to get there, and to figure it out on my own.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of that whole human experience of growth. And so then to discount tragedy, you're discounting the points in life that allow you to grow. And I mean, it's like they're meaningless. That's not something that we should focus on. No, I mean, you got to fully appreciate pain before you can appreciate joy.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I had a hard time swallowing the failure thing. But his correlation is smart, though. I mean, if you look at yourself, if we can step out of all we know psychologically, counseling-wise, and we are a innovator, entrepreneur, you know what I mean?
But take his example. Then what that person failed to do is recognize their narcissistic need to think it was only one thing that screwed up. Okay, in other words, I'm really good at what I do. I missed this one part, but this next time I won't. Well, like you said, maybe there's a whole myriad of things why that business failed.
Sure.
But if you don't humble yourself enough to actually open yourself up for feedback from people who have succeeded, who've been down that road and found out, and can look at your business model and say, okay, well, look, yeah, 1, 2, 3, and 4 here. And I'm thinking, wow, I was just thinking of this one. To take the time to really put your pride aside and be open to feedback from people who really have been down that road multiple times. I mean, both benefit.
I wonder if he would argue the fact that you should have done that before you got into the business.
Where's this should thing? I mean,
remember, I said if we can step out of what we know about empathetic perception and those things, and we are a hard-driven robot of nothing but technological development as success in our lives and the advancement of the human race, I would see every failure as a tragedy. It would be a glitch in the program that needs to be rewritten.
But that's like saying, if I get everything right, I'll be happy. Why don't I be happy and then work on getting everything right? I mean,
that's
he's taking the whole human part out of it. In other words, if I
could explain why he's a billionaire.
And if I'm but he got there. But I would want to propose that part of the ways he got there was his own self-analysis.
Sure.
Was taking the time to explore what went wrong or whatever. I mean, doing the research, and then getting someone else's opinion of his research. I mean, when people break it down and they're that precise to find out everything has to be right before you move forward, well, that can also create work paralysis, because it's never right. There's always going to be some variable of chaos there that you can't control.
Right.
And to say that I can control chaos, everything's right now, it's going to succeed, is not realistic.
Sure.
And if people think that they have to be in that position before they can move forward, they're going to kill the passion.
Gotcha. I get his notion too about we shouldn't romanticize the failure too much. And if you do notice, there's a lot of motivational type stuff out there that's about failure, success, and all this stuff. Well, maybe he's trying to just bring up the notion, look, let's not romanticize that, well, you flunked too much. You know what I mean?
That part I agree with. I mean,
yeah.
Anytime you make a mistake, you have to own it.
Sure.
And, not just sort of minimize it or slough it off. But by owning it, you're humbling yourself to the possibility of growth.
Of making it better from there.
But just to minimize it, I'll gain something from it, or, I'll learn something down the road. True, but you're trivializing what that means to you interpersonally. So, we romanticize it, but I think we have to have some of that to have the resiliency to move on to something else. If not, we start to perceive that our choices are wrong, and so then the next thing I'm going to do is probably wrong too. So
then the self-esteem stuff.
Exactly.
Well, you know what? I'll read one of the things I posted today, actually, and see if there's a self-esteem link to one of these where it actually makes sense. I'll find it here. Sorry for the little pause, but all right, I'll start with this one. If the self seeks not pathology but wholeness, as I believe it does, then the willful pursuit of vocation is an act of violence toward ourselves. Violence in the name of a vision that, however lofty, is forced on the self from without rather than growth from within. True self, when violated, will always resist us, sometimes at great cost, holding our lives in check until we honor its truth. Vocation does not come from its willfulness, it comes from listening. I must listen to my life and try to understand what it is truly about, quite apart from what I would like to be about, or my life will never represent anything real in the world, no matter how earnest my intentions.
So he would say that's romancing.
Yeah, he would. He would.
And,
Well, here's your self-esteem link. This is the last one I'll say. We live in a society which sees self-esteem as a proof of well-being, but we do not want to intimidate, but we don't want to be intimate with this admirable and desirable person. We see moral and social conventions as inhibitions on our personal freedoms, and yet we are frightened of anyone who goes away from the crowd and develops eccentric habits, like my eccentric guest. We believe that everyone has a singular personal voice and is, moreover, questionably creative, but we treat with the darkest suspicion at best anyone who uses one of the most clearly established methods of developing creativity, solitude. We think we are unique, special, and deserving of happiness, but we are terrified of being alone. We are supposed to now seek our own fulfillment, to act on our own feelings, to achieve authenticity and personal happiness, but mysteriously not do it on our own. Today, more than ever, the charge carries both moral judgment and weak logic.
Well, I would say to transcend all that is to separate truth from emotion.
Okay. Yeah, you can find Leo at truthnotemotion.com.
There we go. Because that's what happens. I mean, we start getting emotionally invested in it. We need someone else to say hello, you're caught up in the emotion of it. Be it you're being narcissistic, like my way is the only way, or they're confusing, that self-esteem with narcissism. I mean, you can have self-esteem but not be closed off to feedback. I mean, if you have that insecurity, then you're going to have the resistance. And if you have that resistance, you're not going to grow. But if you have that confidence that comes from a self-reliance, that confidence that comes with self-esteem, then you welcome the different. You don't fight against it. You try to understand it. And that's where you learn.
That's so hard for people. You know, I see that.
But that's a perception.
Right? Yeah, I do. There's certain people that, I guess I'm asking that question because I'm not wired like them. I haven't experienced life like them, so I can't believe like them. But some people are just not, generally speaking, they don't see that. They don't see that need to be, to show plasticity, to be able to be humble enough to grow, to take criticism and advice under the notion that it makes them smarter.
Right.
Due to that lack of, maybe like you said, self-esteem, or that idea that we're so unsure about ourselves that we have to fake being sure, which generally shuts us out from ever becoming smarter or allowing growth to come from anyone else.
Right.
All based on an idea that, well, we have to act like we really got this shit together.
Well, that's why they're resistant, because they don't. That's where that insecurity comes from, that they're finding their value based on what they do, and now when they figured out how to do it, don't tell me there's another way, because then you're devaluing what it is I do.
And my choices from the past.
And my value then comes from what I do, so when you're disagreeing with me, you're devaluing me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the resistance comes in.
Yeah.
But if your value comes from the inside out instead of the outside in, then whatever's out there, you're trying to see what is compatible with what's in here and what isn't. And so you're not threatened by it. You don't have that fear, that sort of risk, your own sense of integrity by them violating a belief system. But the belief is that I'm doing this, I'm getting positive feedback from people on what I'm doing. Don't tell me that there's a better way to do it, because then you're challenging my source of value.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
And they shut down. But there again, that's where the emotion comes in, because emotionally they're more invested on how they're perceived than who they are.
Mm.
And those are the people that have a real hard time learning.
Well, that's people shaping their internal environments based on what they perceive they need or want from the external environment.
Exactly.
So I look at people, places, things, and understand that that's what I want, no, that's what I need, so then I begin to shape my internal environment to match.
Right. So if I go out there and I think, well, if I have everything that I want out there, the approval of my success and everything, then I'm going to feel fulfilled.
See, that word success, I think, troubles many people, because that notion, idea, or success. You know what? Check this out, man. They did this experiment they were talking about, right? And they wanted to research basically I thought how arrogant people would be. But they took a couple thousand people and split them in half, and what they said is, and they told half of these people, half of you are going to play a rigged game of Monopoly, all right, where it's rigged, where each play or each position has already started, to where one has a lot of money, one's the poorest on the table, etc. And you're going to flip a coin to see who becomes one of the four people playing already. One is the thimble, who's broke, poor, no properties. One becomes the Bentley or whatever, who owns all the properties, etc. They go into this game knowing it's rigged, knowing they flipped a coin to even become this person. Then as the game goes on, the person who happened to start off as the rich person, destroys everyone on the team. And then when asked at the end, well, what was it? Their response became, well, I'm good at this game and I know it. I've played this before. This becomes the response when they know it's rigged. And then the game where the people played, where they didn't know it was rigged, didn't go into it with a game flip, just were assigned, you're this, this, and this, came out and said, I got lucky. So the arrogance that even when we know the game is rigged and made it, and then this spoke to further research where they were showing that what they were showing is that rich people tend to become less empathetic and more entitled, and vice versa for poor. So they laid out a bowl of free candy, and then they would allow people that would walk by, grab the candy, follow them for a minute, then stop them and do a socioeconomic background check. Well, what you would notice is the rich people would grab a massive handful, shove it in their pocket, and proceed with their friends going, while less fortunate would look for their favorite taste or color, pick 1, 2, or 3, maybe if they went over 3, would hand it to a friend a few steps down the street and would stop there.
That's the entitlement. It comes with the arrogance and everything else.
But I thought that Monopoly shit's crazy when you know the game is rigged. And so how many people that make it under this, back to circle back, the definition of success, a lot of that is luck. The timing, who you met at the time with the money, who had the idea first, etc. A lot of it is how it hits the market. You did some research, you can do a lot of studies that hope this name works, this color works, but a lot of it's pro forma data.
Sure.
So a lot of it has to do with luck, but instead, these successful people stand in front of you and tell you, I made it because I made my decision, or I changed my perception, or I became mindful, or I did the here and now, da-da-da, like the Monopoly players.
Right.
But won't go, I had a streak of luck that happened.
Right.
I happened to time it right with my product, my idea, or whatever it was.
Well, and those are the more humble people. I mean, those are the people that sort of minimize the fact that, like, you know, it took them 5 years to be an overnight success. Yeah, you know, that they've been preparing and being persistent towards this until they found their luck. But
I feel that way about the self-made man talk. And nobody's, I'm sorry, nobody's a self-made fucking man. Somebody handed you money, somebody helped you get the money. I mean, someone did something for you along the fucking way. And
so then you get a lucky break. But it's not based on the lucky break, it's how persistent you were until you found the lucky break.
The persistence, I think, speaks to it. I think maybe that's persistence, timing, and a little bit of luck.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the single most ingredient of success is not intelligence, luck, not wealth, you know, where you were born, whatever your economics. It's persistence. I mean, if everyone is persistent and you're reasonably intelligent and motivated, and you have that passion, I mean, you're going to get there. There's a lot of people that are brilliant that never really succeed in that sense because they give up. I mean, they don't keep up. I mean, it's that person that's committed and is persistent can pretty much obtain whatever it is they're after at some point in time.
How does that speak to relationships?
Same thing. I mean, if you want to continue to work on solutions instead of just focusing on problems as a way of sabotaging yourself, so you don't want to risk failing then. So, you know, but if you're persistent, you're going to find out why it won't fail, why you need to keep doing what you're doing, and whatever's working, do more of it, and whatever isn't, eliminate it. It doesn't have to be complicated, but you have to be persistent.
And how much do we work in risk management with persistence in what we do?
Well, we're a throwaway society. I mean, instead of trying to make it work or fix it or whatever, just throw it out and get another one. I mean, then that's relationships. That's this damn car. You know, I haven't liked it since I first got it. You know, the headlight keeps going out, so I'm going to go trade it. Why don't you just get new headlights, you know. But there's some people that have a low tolerance.
They get caught up in that. They don't even know why they do what they do.
They just want it, and they want it now. And that's sort of a...
Why they cut the ends off the ham?
Exactly. The ham story.
So the ham story, so the ham fits in the pan.
That's right.
Yeah, sure.
So, but I mean, it's true.
Well, I mean, what I don't know, what are you, because I know as a child, and maybe early teen, not maybe, definitely early 20s, teens, we make decisions as almost if we're in denial of death, as if risk management doesn't apply in our lives. And then, I think, what's the percentage that when you reach 25, your lifespan goes up, your life by like 30-something%. So if you make it to 25, you're going to live. You got a little longer chance to live. What's it about 25? Do we realize and go, holy shit, I should not be fucking 25 right now based on how far I got? And then is that when we basically realize and go, okay, risk management from here on the fuck out on whatever I do?
What's those actuary tables, you know, from insurance companies that tell us that? But I mean, it's more that it's a natural order of things.
Sure.
Where do you start to get
I used to hate
freaked out?
that fucking line, man. I
It
heard
is
that
so
line
true.
a lot in my life.
Well, here's the deal. What I mean by natural order is, if I'm a kid, that means I probably have parents, and the parents probably have grandparents, maybe even great-grandparents. Well, okay, great-grandparents are still alive. Well, I got a cushion here. So the grandparent passes away, grandparents are gone. And then when mom and dad pass away, it's like I'm next. That's when you start feeling your own mortality. But when you have, like, you know, I don't have to worry about this because they have to go through to my grandfather, they have to go through my parents, and then I get to me. So right now, I'm invincible because I got this buffer in front of me.
Right, I'm not next in line.
That's right. And I think that's part of the mentality is, and that's what I mean by the natural
Maybe that's
order.
why it's so tragic when a son or daughter dies before a parent.
And that's why the parent can't wrap their head around it because it isn't that natural order. They're supposed to go first, not the kid. And they're not even wired to understand or way of coping with it because it's never expected.
Sure.
So I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, I had another podcast left field away from that sad shit, but it's pretty neat. I'm an avid listener to all of them. But they were talking about languages and correlating styles of languages to money habits.
Yeah.
Be it saving, spending, whatever. And they took a language like Mandarin and English. One thing about English language is we have an excellent way to work time frame into how we talk. It rained, it's raining, it's going to rain, right? It's rained before, it has been raining, it's going to be raining, right? It hasn't been raining, right? All the different ways. Well, apparently in these other languages like Mandarin, etc., it's difficult to speak and work in time frames of future. It's very here and now. And I guess the way the language is structured is we can say it rained or it's raining or it's going to rain. They just say it rains. And so there's different and more difficult ways. So they've correlated. I don't know if it's positive or negative, the correlation, right? But they've found that people like Finland, I guess, Finns speak a language similar to Mandarin, hard to be futuristic, tend to be very save-oriented. Or save money, save money, save money. When future-oriented people, or languages, don't save and spend, spend, spend. And try to correlate this to that fact that because we can talk about it in the future tense, it's not something we need to think about. As in Mandarin, when it's, well, there isn't this idea of retirement, there's this idea of saving money, or I make money. So I make money, I save money. And here it's, well, when I retire. So that notion of, well, I don't have to yet, the natural order of things possibly. I thought that was so fucking fascinating. And I mean, they went deeper down the hole about future languages that can easily speak in future,
Right.
and add anxiety, stress, all these ideas and notions. And
Absolutely.
even obesity, and eating habits. I was, what the fuck?
Well, I mean, because it eliminates the need to deal with it. By saying it rains is a generalization that, yeah, that's part of what we deal with. But to break it down in past, present, and future, it's a way of trying to control something that's out of our control. Where they are easier able to just accept that, it rains. So that's what I deal with. When it rains, I deal with it.
Yeah.
And it does take a lot of anxiety out, because when you're trying to anticipate a future.
Because I say, hey,
then
it's going to rain.
when that goes back to process and outcome.
Negative or sad.
I mean, if we're worrying about outcome, but we haven't lived the process, we have no idea if that's going to happen or not. That's why our weathercasters are, what, 50% accurate? You know, but still, we listen to
Not
them.
NOAA.
But
Not NOAA. NOAA. Not NOAH.
there you go.
NOAA.
Well, the whole point is, though, anytime you're thinking future, you're trying to fill in blanks that you don't have answers to, and that's going to create anxiety.
Well, but how much of that is it human? You know, we're about the only species that doesn't act like the species we are. Like a bear doesn't try to be a fox. You know, a fish doesn't try to be a bird, at least from what we know. And so, I mean, we're about the only species that tries to break from what we are and not be satisfied with what we are. I mean, we fly planes to get to places. We drive things. I mean, that is not what we do, you know. But because we are able to future think, that gives us that capability.
Well, but there's a difference between just focusing on and needing to rely on what the outcome's going to be, and then making choices that get you to that outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you have the confidence of how you arrived. You know, to just try to understand the future without living the process, that's where the anxiety comes on. So, I mean, I think all species, you know, plan for the future, but it's a direction they know they're heading in, but it's not necessarily the
Oh,
destination.
yeah, you could argue they know the future because birds migrate, bears hibernate. So
Absolutely.
I guess they do prepare for the future.
Squirrels are looking for nuts right now.
But they're not trying to not hibernate, and they're not trying to not migrate and also manipulate their environment. We're one of the only species that can truly fully manipulate an environment to where we don't have to move or fly somewhere when it gets cold. We just build a fucking house,
Well, and it goes back,
light a fire, whatever.
but it all goes back to control.
Mm.
I mean, the ultimate form of anxiety is it relates to a lack of control. You know, not being able to control the uncontrollable. That makes me vulnerable. That creates a sense of fear, anxiety.
Could not controlling the uncontrollable possibly have been the mustard seed, pun intended, to religion?
Well, I mean, you know,
The need to answer, the
a lot of
need
people
to
said
know.
if there isn't one, we create one. But I mean, that's a whole other scenario. Because even the man in religion.
I'm sorry about that. I hate the cliche religious
No.
arguments.
I mean,
I threw it out there. I put the layup up there just to laugh.
But
we definitely don't need to have that
it's-
religious
It
conversation.
is consistent though, because I mean, the Mandarin religion. I mean, look how much the language may be affected by religion. You know, by their belief system, Hinduism, Buddhism. I mean, how much of that has found its way into how they think?
Holy shit!
With the language.
Right, because the Mandarins, the Buddhists, the here and now, the present.
Exactly.
Holy shit!
Right.
So their language isn't futuristic, which matches to the oh my god, which
That's right.
matches to the religion.
Yep.
Catholicism, Christianity, all talks about the coming of Jesus, the rapture.
And they're all looking toward the future.
All looking toward the future. Holy
Right.
fuck!
It all relates.
How much
So,
does the language term? Whoa, dude!
it's a reflection of
Connect
their
to
belief
the
system.
religion. I don't
that
know
belief
enough
system
about.
goes
I mean,
back.
I know about Muslim, and it's even that's more history though.
Yeah.
Muslims, well, no, it's close. Muslim and Christianity is damn near the same story.
Well-
If people really, I mean, I've read the Quran multiple times. I've read the Bible multiple times. Please, Christians, please read the Quran. Muslims, please read the Bible. You will be very surprised how they may correlate. You're almost like cousins fighting each other. It's almost the same story. But my point is, I know you're trying to ease
Yeah.
it down because it's a conflict of interest of what I'm saying. But it's true though. But they have to be able to step out. Look, I say if you can't argue both points, you're naive as fuck.
No, I mean, but
You know, you gotta, and that's what led me to
That's
read
cool.
the Quran
That's
and,
cool
and the
with-
Bible. You know.
But no, where I'm going back to is it's a belief system. And whatever your core beliefs are, that society, that culture, particularly a culture as closed as the Mandarin culture or the Chinese culture in general, I mean, you start to think then that permeates all aspects of what they do, including how they think, including then how they frame their language,
How they
structure.
talk.
And
Shit.
so they talk how they think. And
So Mandarin, they even do business that way.
Right.
It's very, let's not get into business. Even, you know, it's going to be, let me get to know you. Let's talk about now. How are you doing now?
Right.
You don't want to go right into business.
Well, and even the social races. I mean, to not be present in the moment, and you're already talking this, but you haven't gone through those formalities before we get to that as an insult.
Right.
Because then you're not acknowledging the fact that I'm here.
And when over here, it's like, let me do you a favor, let's get right down to it.
Right.
I don't care about your kids, I don't care about your Sunday, let's get right down to business.
Right.
And that's how we do business. So,
Right.
wow. So what came first, the dialogue or the religion?
Well, you might say what came first was the belief.
Where'd the belief come from?
There you go. I mean, that came from a story that...
How far down the hole are we now?
I think we'd be able to cover that in about, 500 of these? But if we knew, the answers, then you'd remove the mystery. And the mystery is all part of it, too, because the mystery gives us a sense where we can integrate our own belief system and see what correlates, what fits, to reaffirm what it is we need to believe, what we need to think. Where it gets bad and where we have wars is because people believe that their belief system is better.
My God's better
right
than your
and wrong,
God.
and
How much would my dad could beat up your dad?
instead of looking for the commonalities and
Right.
seeing that, I mean, everyone has evolved differently in a different culture, but I mean, there's a lot more that overlap that are in common that are different. But we tend to not accept differences because if you have a difference, then you're telling me I'm wrong. And so I'm not going to be wrong, you're wrong. And that's sort of the basis of wars then. So
Joe Rogan talks a lot about, it makes me think about it too, how we've divided ourselves by these imaginary lines that don't even exist in countries, etc. Countries, states, counties, towns.
Right.
These lines don't even exist, but yet, we have this choose side, this Eastside versus Westside, this Crip versus Blood, this Western America, the Eastern America.
But we use it to justify our aggression. I mean, there has to be a line, and if you cross it, then that gives me a reason to be
fake
aggressive.
fucking line.
Well, that's why the Native Americans, they laughed at, we're going to sell you this property, and you think it's actually yours. And you own this property. And no one can take this property from you.
How are you selling me something you don't own?
You don't own. You'll never own. Someone else is going to own it 100 years from now, but I'll sell it to you if you want it. But the trouble is, because they had a different belief system, there was an intolerance there, and they used lines, and they used
lines in the sand
to be able to
literally lines in the sand.
Well, yeah, they. You get out to surveyors, and this is where they, that particular degree on this side, it's mine, it's yours. But that's also something that I can sell then. If I own it, I can sell it.
Back to the money.
And it goes back to the need for, the early basis of capitalism and everything else. So.
Yeah, I heard a statement where he said, a lot of people talk about how capitalism and competition go hand in hand. And I disagree. Because capitalism is one person collecting a lot of the things, whatever that is, widgets, money, whatever. Well, competition ensures that not a lot of one person collects a lot of the one thing.
Right.
So you can't have pure capitalism with competition. Because pure capitalism is you collect a bunch of things, I collect a bunch of things, be that money, resources, etc. But if I got a bunch of competition trying to collect the same resource, then I have no capitalism.
Well,
so they don't necessarily go hand in hand, capitalism and competition.
I think it's in comparison to other forms of government. There maybe when you have a monarchy or an anarchy or communism or socialism, then there's no competition there either. I'm the king and you're the peasant. Okay.
Right. Well, and that's pure capitalism because he's collecting all the resources and money, isn't he?
Well, but that's why we have these different car companies, and
Yeah, four.
And you have the
so it's not real competition. Two.
Well, but that's what happens. Is the little fish become bigger and start eating the smaller fish, which makes them a bigger fish, and they can eat more of the smaller fish, and eventually you end up with just a couple big fish in the pond.
I'm waiting to where we can go to Taco Bell and order a pizza, when I can go to Kentucky Fried Chicken and order a Whopper, when I can go fucking anywhere, and all I'm doing, right? Follow me.
Yeah.
All I'm doing is I pick brand names, right? There's McDonald's, there's Burger King, there's Pepsi, there's Coke, there's Ford, there's Chevy, right? And if you look at most of the new cars that come out today, they all look the fucking same. Some are 80 grand, some are 25 grand, but they all look the fucking same. And so for me, I look at a car and go, well then I'm just buying it based on a name I like. Nothing else.
Right.
Every polo shirt looks like a fucking polo shirt, but people gotta buy the Ralph Lauren as opposed to Faded Glory. There is no real difference.
Right.
And that correlates to what I'm saying is we're just picking based on we like that, so that's what we go with when there's no real fucking difference.
Well, but the difference is how it's perceived.
What we perceive, right.
And that goes back to what we initially talked about. It goes back to, I mean, everything we do is driven by our perceptions. And, you know, nothing's upsetting to you unless you perceive it to be.
Mhm.
Nothing's enjoyable, nothing's valuable.
As you perceive it to be.
And, you know, if the one guy you were talking about, I mean, if he perceives that failure is romanticized, then from his standpoint it is.
Well, how much of I'm gonna throw this in. How much when we talk to clients, and I know you do a lot too, is when we talk to clients that are say anxious, sad, depressed, or in this state, this state of sadness, and we talk to them about their perception of things. How much of that is, or does the person separate and go, well, all right, I changed the perception, but I still feel the way I feel.
Yeah. Well, but recognizing that, I mean, acknowledging the feeling as opposed to believing you are the feeling, you have changed your perception. I acknowledge that I'm coping with depressed, but I'm no longer saying I'm depressed. I'm not defining myself as depression. I'm being affected by depression.
Mm-hmm.
I still feel it, but I know it's an emotion.
So, well, that goes back to the process too. Is I think when I talk a lot to people working cognitive behavioral stuff, you know, they love to look at me and go, "So lie to myself." That's what you're telling me. And I'm going, look, you have to focus on what the process is. As we begin to change what we think, day by day, and how we think it, that process begins to change a feeling. It's not an instantaneous to where we go, "That's not a steak, that's a chicken." You know, I mean, it's not this idea.
I mean, I look at it more that, no, acknowledge, yeah, depression exists, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's why I say put a name and face on it, like your least favorite supervisor or teacher in school. That's depression. Okay, it's in the room. You can't make them leave, but you choose to what extent you let it affect you,
Right.
let it control you, so that you acknowledge that emotion. But that's where I do the pause, and then, you know, if you're having this conundrum, that second guessing of what to do because the emotions just completely, the emotional clouds are surrounding you, if I do what I would advise, that's my loophole, because now I'm acting on my truth, my own personal truth of what I would encourage someone to do.
Mm-hmm.
The emotion's still there, but I don't listen to emotion. Emotions make lousy choices, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's there, I'm not denying it, but I'm not going to do it. I mean, because I know where that road goes, and it's not where I want to go. So I end up doing what I would advise, and as a result, I feel different. You know, and because I feel better for having done that, I'm more likely to make another positive choice. Because I made a positive choice, I feel better. Because I feel better, I make a positive choice. If I'm over here saying, you know, this depression sucks, and I keep saying I'm depressed, instead of, I mean, like we said, you wouldn't say I'm headache, but if you say I'm depressed, you define yourself as something you don't like. If you don't like yourself, then you're going to make a negative choice. Because I made a negative choice, I don't like myself. Now it's rolling there. So you don't have to eliminate the emotion. You just have to recognize it. It's an aspect of me, but it doesn't define me. And if I can see it as something that's there, like that splinter in my finger, then yeah, the reason it doesn't feel good is because it's not compatible with who you are.
With who you are.
So, and if I know that awareness, then causes so I don't react anymore to the emotion. I acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Instead, I respond to my truth, which then in turn changes my emotion. So, and I think so many people in business or whatever, if they have that emotion where they think that failure is a reflection on my abilities, or failure tells me that I'm not cut out for this, or failure says that I'm inadequate, and I should have known that. Now I'm letting that emotion dictate any future development, because it's completely overwhelmed my capacity to feel good about who I am.
Yeah. And most people would, and they trump on it because they go, "That's how I should feel."
Well, and so many people, that's why, you know, the most common way of coping is to blame yourself. You know, it's my fault. Because if it's my fault, I can fix it. I mean, that's that childhood way of coping with things that adults carry with them. And you take it into business. Well, this happened, it's my fault. Well, no, I mean, if you had this great business and right across the street this huge one that does the same thing, you know, opened up, did I fail, or is it it's situational? It's not personal.
Right.
Okay, so, but does that mean, well, I'm a failure because of that? Well, no, that means I need to relocate. Okay, so
Right.
but
Yeah, I love that perception when people make. Well, it speaks to where people make that assumption from the very beginning.
right,
You know, when I talk about some clients that are trying to deal with losing weight, you know, they look at it and they'll explore all these ideas that maybe I have a hormonal issue, maybe I have body dysmorphic disorder, maybe all these things are wrong with me, right?
Right.
And then we look into it farther and they just have a time management problem. They just can't time management because, well, I got kids and this and this and this, and it's really that, you know, the perception that, but they want to make almost, people are willing to make a serious assumption about themselves, like, say, I'm bipolar, right, out loud, and make this assumption about themselves rather than have to deal with the notion of changing it or doing something different. They'd rather just say, you know what, I have body dysmorphic disorder, because that's easier than actually having to adjust my time and lay out a time management plan and actually lose fucking weight.
sure. I mean,
It's easier to bitch and just be negative.
But that's because their coping skills are set up in such a way that I've accepted I'm depression, or
Right.
and so
back to the
so in other
dialogue.
words, I'd have to let go of my coping skills and be something else, and I'm not really set up to do that.
Maybe they should learn
all of a
Mandarin.
sudden, it's sort of like addiction. I mean, it's easier just to admit that I'm an addict, because then all my defense mechanisms, everything, are set up to handle that, that label.
Right.
But all of a sudden, if I'm clean and sober, whoa, how do I do that? I mean, I have no way of thinking of myself that way. It's like forming a whole new identity, and I'm not sure I can sustain it. And sooner or later, I'm going to think that I'm going to fail. So why bother? Just let me stay where I'm at.
That's right. It's easier just to stay in the mess.
Exactly. And well, that's that idea. There's comfort in complacency, but no growth.
Right.
And people are very comfortable with complacency, and that's why things don't change, and they tend to, the same people are perseverating on the same problems, because they don't want to look beyond the problems, because beyond they have no understanding of how to deal with that. The problem in the moment, it's like an old enemy that they know how to battle, and but now all of a sudden, if I no longer have that enemy, I may have another enemy that I don't know how to battle. So let me keep the one that I know.
Yeah.
And then they lock themselves in, but that's the perception.
That's true. Yeah, that all speaks to that power of the perception, man. A lot of people, I'm seeing it more and more starting to come out and be a little more popular. People are understanding about that notion of what you believe will become, what you see.
Yeah.
Those ideas. Not the idea that I
Whole
imagine.
mindfulness thing.
Yeah, it's starting to become a little bit more generalized knowledge now. About how helpful that can be to a point. Trying to be in the here and now place, man. But, dude, let's keep chatting for a while, man. We'll shut the show down. It's been about an hour, but I'm gonna keep chatting with you.
Sure. Absolutely.
I appreciate you guys joining me tonight on the Cognitive Rampage. Like I said, next week I'll be over in Boca with Dr. Jan Burt, clinical pain psychologist or clinical psychologist focused on sports psychology. He's a sex therapist. He's the president of the South Florida Erickson hypnosis thing. He's been practicing a long time. I was up in New York too, practicing for a long time. But I'll have Dr. Jan Burt on the show. But you can find Leo at truthnotemotion.com. He's a private therapist here in Naples, a relationship specialist for sure, among many other things, a mentor to me. I'd call you my therapist too. I'd call you that too.
Yeah, I like a challenge, but that's ridiculous.
But I always love having Leo on the show. I thought I had one more thing to tell you, and I can't remember. Anyway, jump on the Cognitive Rampage Facebook. Check out some of the things I posted up. Got some really cool research stuff that's out there. Oh, that's what I was going to do. I'm going to leave you guys with something to think about. Those of you that may be experiencing depression, anxiety, PTSD, what have you, and just feel like nothing's been working for you, you've been trying antidepressants or whatever, I'd urge you to go back to the basics, start at the beginning, talk with your doctor about getting a hormone test, getting your blood levels checked, going very back to the basics, starting with your thyroid and other things, and looking at your diet too, because simply changing your diet to help you adjust hormones and certain levels in your body can do amazing, wonderful things faster and more sustainable than any medication that exists out there. So take some holistic avenues, go back to the basics, don't just keep or don't just keep shoving pills down your throat, man. But I want to leave you with that again. Thanks for joining me tonight, and I'll see you next Sunday from Boca.
Take it easy.